Hey guys, welcome back to the second episode of my first person player porn series, where in the last one we got this far. We made some basic animations for our player, we set up all our assets and stuff, and in this episode we're going to be getting into the real meat and potatoes of our first person shooter game mechanics and do some shooting and reloading. I'm going to get into the get into the good stuff here. So without further ado, oh, and by the way, make sure that you scroll down to the description because you'll be able to pick up the whole asset pack that I use here, including the meshes and the animations, all of which I made myself, but it's all based on these free assets that I downloaded, like the meshes and the textures, but I rigged and animated them myself, so they're going to be really good for practice, that kind of thing, but you can't use these in your own monetized work. That makes sense to you guys? Okay, so let's start by jumping into our first person pawn here. So the first thing we want to do is set up our pawn and its and the shooting, like the firing mechanics. So just right click and we'll get your input action fire. So type in fire and it'll be an action event. And you can check your actions if you go to edit and then project settings. It'll take a second to load this screen. There we go. Down in input under the engine subheader, you should be able to see your action mapping. So I've got fire, jump, throttle down, throttle up. Yeah, like they're you can make new action mappings, see little pluses and everything. I'm just gonna use the fire one here for our shooting. I don't have one for reload. I might just use a key for that. Doesn't necessarily matter at this particular point. So let's come out of here, out of our fire. Well, we need our primary weapon. We have to get our primary weapon, which in the last episode we spawn here and declare it as a variable from our begin play. We're going to need to get our fire event. So we'll just type in fire, and we'll get the event from our weapon-based blueprint, which we're also going to be referencing in our child class here in a bit, and just hook it up to our fire action. And furthermore, because we don't want to be playing our arms animation when there's no bullets in the gun, so we'll come out of here and get our ammo count from our weapon, and make sure that we have more than 0 bullets. So go greater than. We need an integer greater than integer. So we need to make sure that we've got more than 0. Hold in B and click for a branch, and connect up the result of this boolean to this branch, and then connect it to our fire event here. Following that, let's grab our mesh 1p, that's our arms, our FPS arms rigged in our blueprint here, this component, and we want to play a montage. So we'll drag off this, we'll get a play montage node, and this is going to play our fire. So we'll hook this up to true from our branch, and we'll get our FPS arms, fire, and montage. We don't need to change any of these values, we can just leave this as is. So let's compile, save, and we'll have a little quick word about montages. So first thing, if we go to our animation blueprint, the one that we set up in the last video, and head over to our animation graph, you can see here's our state machine, and we also plugged in our default slot in our animation group to go into our final animation pose. So we're going to be first of all playing our state machine. That's our big motions, our idle, our run, our jump. And then on top of that, once our state machine's playing that, we're going to play this default slot over the top of it, or afterwards. So after we play our state machine, we'll play the animation in this slot, which is just our default slot animation. And the reason that we do this is because if we open up our arms fire anim montage, we can see that it is, if we're down here in the little montage group here, it's the default group for montages and the default slot in this little drop down here. I've also gone and lowered the blend time a little bit so that we get the most out of our montage. It's going to blend in the shortest time possible. So I've just dropped this from, I think the default is 0.25. Yeah, we'll just drop this down to 0.1. Hit save, and then we're good to go. So that's our arms and their firing animation. And now we can head over to our child weapon blueprint here, and we can set this up, get this ready for shooting. The first thing to do is to head over to the construction script, and we want to set the default values for the variables that we're going to need, such as our max ammo, ammo count, reload time, that kind of thing. There's variables that we declared in our weapon base in the last video. So just draw off this parent construction script here. I mean, there's nothing in the parent construction script. We don't necessarily need to worry about that, but we'll leave that there and just set our max ammo. Set our max ammo for an AK-47, that'll be 30 bullets. And then we want to set our ammo count. So by default, we want to have 30 bullets. We want to have our max ammo count. And then our reload time. So we'll set reload time Set this to something, how about 2 seconds, 2.0, 2-second reload time, and then we want to set our bullet spread. Set the bullet spread. We'll set our bullet spread to something like 500. That number will make sense as we go forward. So with our variable set like that, let's head back to the event graph and let's get our fire event. So we'll right click, go event fire. This is the event that we declared in our parent blueprint. We're going to call on it here to set up all of our shooting. And this will be different for each weapon that you've got. Part of why we use a parent blueprint here is so that we can just create children blueprints to handle such as different weapons and that kind of thing, which we might get to in a future video. Anyway, for the time being, let's just right click and get our ammo count, because we want to also find out if we have the bullets that we can fire here in the pawn. We're going to do that same quick check as we did before. So holding B, get a branch, and then we want to get a greater than, integer greater than integer. Make sure that we have more than 0 bullets, and hook this up as the condition for our branch. And if we do, we want to be able to shoot. We want to be able to do our firing event here. So before we do that, let's just head back to our FPS pawn here. We want to quickly make ourselves a variable that we're going to be needing going forward. Let's just make a quick boolean called is reloading, and we'll make sure that we compile that so we can draw on it in our other blueprint. And then back in our event fire, we want to make sure. Well, not make sure. We want to deplete our ammo every time that we shoot, and obviously we can't shoot while the player is reloading. That should make sense. That should make sense. So let's go to functions, make a new one, call this one our ammo check function, and then grab our ammo count, our current ammo, and then decrement that integer. So just right click or draw off the ammo count here, hit minus minus, and you'll find this decrement int node, which is just going to subtract 1 from our integer here every time this little node gets fired. The next thing is to make sure that we're not reloading while we're trying to shoot. So let's just right click, we'll get the player character, just like that, and we want to cast to our FPS pawn underscore BP. And because we don't necessarily need to fire through this execution for our cast node, we can just right click this, convert it to a pure cast, and that'll save us a little bit of space, because we're pretty sure that it's going to succeed. And then as our pawn here, let's get is reloading, and then holding B and click for another branch, we'll make sure that we are not reloading when we go to try and fire. So out of false, we can play our AK fire animation. So we'll just drag off the false here and go play animation. We're not using montages with our primary weapon, because our primary weapon doesn't have doesn't use an animation blueprint, so we don't need to necessarily care about that. And the primary weapon's fire animation is pretty simple. It's just a slide going back and forward. So we can just play this AK fire underscore anim and be done with it. So let's just compile that, save it, and we can also do a little bit of debugging as we go here. Make sure that everything's working just fine. I'm just going to grab my ammo count, and we want a print string node. We'll just drag our ammo count into the print string, hook this up to our play animation at the end of our ammo check, and then make sure that we connect our ammo check to our event fire event. That way, we can see when we compile, save, and then hit play, every time we left click, so our animations are working fine. And as you can see in the top left, I'll just face somewhere a little darker so we can see a bit more clearly, that we're depleting our ammo by 1 every time we fire, and then when we get to 0, we can no longer shoot. So that all makes sense. This is all the fundamentals of shooting, and obviously we hit play. The firing animations are working fine. They're being very consistent. Okay, so with that done, we can get on to, well, the actual bullets, the actual shooting. For shooting, we're going to do a bunch of line tracing, which is a pretty simple thing to do. So let's just make ourselves a new function. We'll call it line trace. And just a quick word about sort of general FPS game mechanics. When you go to fire a gun in a first-person view, you're essentially firing that bullet from the middle of your face, if you know what I mean, like from the center of the camera that you're looking through, straight ahead to where the crosshair is pointing and landing on the next surface that shows up. This is interesting in a way because the gun itself, the gun that you're holding, doesn't have that same aim, doesn't have that same forward vector, won't shoot a bullet on that same trajectory. So we can do a few things here. I'm going to show you guys a really good method for how to handle line tracing in the first person view. First of all, let's go to our ammo check. I'm going to need these two nodes here, this cast to our FPS pawn. So I'll paste them in, and out of this, as FPS pawn, what we want to do is get our first person camera, and then we need our forward vector, and we're going to need our world position. So let's get our world location rather. All right, these are the two most important sort of vectors that we need from our camera. And then out of our line trace main function here, we want to get our line trace, our first line trace. We want to line trace by channel, and just to make it a bit easier to tell the difference, I'm going to right click, and then in node comment, I'm just going to type in camera shot, because this is going to be the line trace that we fire from the camera, which will probably be the one that we actually use to do the damage, you know, when it comes to that. I might make myself a little bit more space here. So our world location for the camera is going to be our start position of this vector. And then our forward vector, we'll grab this and we'll multiply it by a float, something huge, something around, I don't know, 20,000, fairly big number, and plug this into our end location. So we'll compile that, set our draw debug type to duration, bring down this little menu here. We've got a draw time of 5 seconds, ignore self. That's all good. So let's compile. Back in our event graph, let's grab our line trace function, hook this up to our tree, compile, hit play, and now when we left click, we have our line trace from the center of the camera, from the camera's location to the direct center of the screen. Makes sense so far, but it's going to land on the exact same spot every time we fire, which isn't particularly realistic, but we have a bullet spread variable for that. So let's head back to line trace here, and we can expand on this just a little bit. So let's grab our bullet spread variable, and then we also want to multiply it. Just float, multiply by float, multiply it by -1. So we get not just the positive value of our bullet spread, but also the negative value too. So we're not just, so that the spread won't be occurring just in a simple sort of up X, up Y sort of method. Will be going in all 4 directions. And then out of the, we'll go out of this multiply into a random float in range. And yeah, so what we're going to be doing is getting a random float in between our bullet spread value and the negative version of our bullet spread value. So from -500 up to 500, it'll get a random number in there. And we want to apply this to our end vector here. So come out of this multiply into a plus, a vector plus vector. Oh, and in fact, we might even, yeah, we'll want to plug in our world location into this plus. We'll add our world location to the adjusted forward vector of our first person camera, and then into another plus. So we'll go Control W to duplicate our vector plus vector, plug in the result of our original plus here to the vector, and then right click the bottom one and split that struct pin so we get these three float values. Then duplicate this random float in range node twice, one for X, one for Y, one for Z. And then we just have to hook these guys up. So plug in our regular bullet spread to the maximum values, and our minimum, our -1, -1. Now our multiply by -1 into the minimum values, and then one at a time into X, then Y, then Z, and the result of our plus here will be our new end value. All right. So this is this fundamental sort of little dot here is our basic line tracing. I've done this in a few videos before, so if you'd like, I think it was my the spray decals video that I did a little while back now, but the basic logic is still the same. So let's just double check that everything's working. We'll hit save and then play. And now when we left click, so we're getting some good spread from our gunshot here. A little bit more realistic, a little bit of variation in where our bullets are going to be landing. All very good so far. The next thing we want to do is duplicate our line trace by channel node. We want to name this one our gunshot. This will be the line trace that comes from the actual gun that we're holding. And we'll just connect these two together. We want to, from this out hit, we want the break hit result node, because we'll be using the impact point of our line trace. That's the point there where this red square shows up. That's the point where the line trace hits. We're going to use that as our end location of our line trace by channel, and we want to grab our muzzle scene component here, which we put in the barrel of the gun here in the last video, which is where the bullet's going to start from. So here we go, back in line trace, we want the muzzle, we want get world location, and this will make the start point of our line trace. Now we'll change the color here so we can see the difference between the two. There we go. Alright, so our camera shot's going to be red, our gunshot is going to be green. Let's compile, save, and we can see exactly what that looks like. So here we go. So the green line is the line firing from our actual gun, and the red line is the shot that fires from our camera. So no matter how far away we are from any given surface, the bullet is always going to land in the right spot. And as you can see from the green line, that it makes sense based on where the gun is in relation to, where the bullet's going to go. So this is a great way to organize your line tracing for first-person pawns. We do use 2 line traces, which I don't think a lot of people are sort of aware of that you can do. You can do this kind of thing, and I haven't seen this in a lot of other UE4 videos. So hopefully you guys learned something from that. It helps us get a really good result for our first-person pawn and our line tracing. The next thing we'll do is reloading. So come back to our weapon event graph here. We'll get our reload event, our event reload, and we want to just simply play our reload animation. So if we just come out of this event reload into another play animation, the primary weapon, that animation is going to be our AK reload anim montage. So we can use montages with these play animations. We don't necessarily need to, but part of like what we're doing, it's a kind of a balancing act between our gun animations and our arm animations, because they're not the same asset. We can't use the same animations for both. So when it comes time to do our animating, we might need to do a little bit of fine tuning with the play rate and the speed of our reloads. So over here in the AK reload montage, I've gone and just lowered the blend time a little bit to 0.2. That should really be all that we need to do for now. But we'll have a little more. We'll have more of a check once we set everything up. So we've got our play animation node here. Next thing we want to do is add a delay. We want to delay by the length of our reload time. Let's get our reload time, plug that into the delay, and then once that's done, we'll set our ammo count to our max ammo value. Alright, pretty straightforward. So we hit reload, and then after the short delay, while the animation plays, we just set our current ammo back to our maximum ammo value, which we declared in our construction script. So far, so good. Now, let's go back to our FPS pawn here, and we'll build out our reload blueprint. So let's just get our R key. I'm not going to bother with another input action. The fire one was already there. I just thought, whatever. Let's piggyback on that one. I'll just use the actual key for this. So out of our R key, we want another branch, because we don't want to be able to reload when we have a full magazine. So let's grab our primary weapon. We want to get our ammo count, and we want to get our maximum ammo. And then make sure that our ammo count is less than our maximum ammo. So just draw off here, get a less than, an integer less than integer, and hook both of these guys up. So if our ammo count is less than max ammo for this another branch, then we can reload. And out of this branch here in the true, we grab ourselves a do once node. So nothing else is going to happen until this do once node has completed, once we come back to this reset here. And the first thing we'll do is set our isReloading variable to true. All right. Now while we're reloading, let's grab our mesh 1p. Let's get our anim instance. And then using our animation instance, let's go montage play. We'll play our montage. It's just a slightly different way than we did before to get montages playing. There's a couple of different controls. They have slightly different effects. I just want to show you guys some different ways that you can play animations on skeletal meshes in UE4. So we hook up our isReloading boolean into our montage play. The montage that we want to play is our reload montage. Our FPS arms reload anim montage. We don't have to change any of these other default values. They're all going to work just fine. So let's grab our weapon, get our reload time, and then from our primary weapon, fire off our reload event. All right, we'll hook this up to our montage play, get a delay, just like we did in our weapon, and delay for the length of our reload time. So there's a little bit of, it sort of looks like redundancy because we've like checked the ammo twice and we're doing our reload delay time twice, but it's because we're using a different blueprint for our weapon as we are from our arms, and they have different animations. This just smooths things out, and it won't be any cost to performance, I guarantee. Out of that delay, let's just set our is reloading back to false. And I'll just make sure that, yep, we're set to true, then set to false once this delay is done. And then we can go back to our reset in our do once. So just drag out of this set boolean into our do once. And the line here gets a little bit confusing, but if we double click on this execution line, we get these dots here, so we can organize the way that we see our blueprint. So just like that, we can now see this closed loop that we're creating with our do once node. So far so good. How about we have a look now and see if everything's working fine. In fact, let's go back to our weapon. We'll go back to our ammo check, grab these print screen nodes, and I'm just going to dump them here at our reload. There we go. Compile and save. Hit play. And now we're depleting ammo when we shoot. We hit R, and we've reloaded. Now we're back at 30. Perfect. All right. So I should mention that I did have a little bit of a play with these montages before. If we go to our our FPS arms reload montage, you can see that the speed and the pace that our arms are reloading. And then if we go to our AK reload animation, we can adjust our blend time here. We can even adjust our play rate by changing the rate scale up here. So we can tweak the playback rate of this animation globally, like across our whole project. So if you're getting any, like if your arm and your gun animations aren't lining up properly, then you can always just tweak the global play rate of these animations to make them line up just right. So, quick little recap. We are, let's see, where are we? So when we fire with our gun, or actually we'll start here at the FPS pawn. So when we get the input action for fire, we fire off our weapon's fire event, make sure that we have the bullets to shoot, and then play the montage for our arms here in the pawn. And then in our weapon blueprint, once this event fire goes off, we check for that ammo again, and then play our animation for shooting. And also make sure that we're not reloading when we try to do that. And also deplete our ammo as we go. And then when we reload in our FPS pawn, so we're going to make sure that we have, so that we're missing bullets in our magazine. So we won't be able to reload when we're at full ammo. And if that's true, then in this do once, we'll have set the reloading as true, play our montage, then play our primary weapons reload event, delay for the reload time, and then set is reloading back to false. And then in the weapon, we're just playing our reload animation, delaying by that reload time, and then resetting our ammo count. So it's fairly simple, really. It doesn't take a whole lot to think about. There's our line tracing, I think, is probably the most complicated thing, like doing bullet spread and organizing the start and end points of our line tracing. And the end result is really good, really good line tracing for our gun. And as you can see, like the endpoint's always going to be the same location, and this green line here you can see coming from the gun, it's always going to make sense and look good, especially once we start setting up tracer rounds and muzzle flashes, that kind of thing, which I'll cover in the next video, I reckon. So thanks guys for watching this far. I hope this helped you, and I hope you're enjoying the series so far. I'm sorry, by the way, if there's a bit of background noise, a bit of interference, because there's roadworks going outside. I've been waiting for them to stop, but it looks like they're setting up shop for the long haul. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next video, where we'll do some artsy things. We'll set up our HUD counters and tracer rounds and some more flashy sort of artsy stuff. So stay tuned, guys. I will catch you then.